I have spent my whole life learning how not to be seen. Not the dramatic kind of invisible, no tragic backstory announced to a room, no tears at dinner. Just the quiet, practiced kind. The kind you build one careful year at a time until you forget you built it at all. Keep your head down. Answer when spoken to. Want nothing that cannot fit inside a servant's pocket. I was excellent at it. And then, one night, in a bathing chamber that was not mine, in water that was not drawn for me, I made the single most catastrophic decision of my carefully invisible life. He appeared in the doorway. He did not look away. His hand, the hand of a man who had reportedly made generals weep and kingdoms surrender, was not entirely steady when he held out the towel. I grabbed it. I said something. I am not certain it was a word. I ran. He found me the next morning. I should have run so much further.
The water was perfect. That was the first mistake. Noticing. Because once I noticed the warmth of it against my skin, the way it held me like something I had not been given permission to want, I stopped thinking about whose chamber this was. I let my hair down. Small rebellion. The kind nobody witnesses. I was, for the first time in longer than I could name, not somebody's maid, just a woman in warm water with steam curling at her shoulders, and the whole palace going about its business without her. I closed my eyes. I should not have closed my eyes. The door opened. Not with a bang, not with a warning, just the soft, certain sound of a latch releasing, and then a quality of stillness that was somehow louder than any sound I had ever heard. I turned. He filled the doorway completely. Broad shoulders, dark hair, the kind of jaw that looked decided upon rather than grown. He had expected an empty room. He had not received one.
His eyes found me, and then nothing. No shout, no fury. Something older than shock settled across his face. Something that lived below thought, below decision, in the part of a wolf-blooded man that does not consult the rest of him before it speaks. His gaze moved. Slowly, across the water, across my shoulders, across my face, which had gone the specific shade of mortified that no dignity recovers from. He did not look away. The steam rose between us. Neither spoke. His wolf was not pacing. It had gone quiet the way a compass needle goes quiet, not searching anymore. Settled. Certain. Done. He reached for the towel, held it out. His jaw was set, but his hand, the hand that had reportedly never trembled for anything, was not entirely steady. I took the towel, said something that was not a sentence, left at a pace that was technically not running. I lay awake until dawn, telling myself I had not noticed. Outside my window, somewhere in the depths of the palace, a wolf went quiet in a way it had never gone quiet before. And in the morning, he came to find me. I heard him before I saw him. That was the problem. I had spent one sleepless night telling myself I had imagined the whole thing, the stillness, the hand, the way his eyes had moved across the water like he was memorizing something he intended to keep. And by morning, I had almost convinced myself. Almost.
Then I heard his footsteps in the east corridor, and my body knew them before my mind had the decency to catch up. I tightened my grip on the mop. Useful object, a mop. Something to do with your hands, something to be. He appeared around the corner and stopped. His eyes found me the same way they had the night before, that slow, deliberate arrival, like I was the only thing in the corridor that was actually there. The silence lasted 3 full seconds. I counted. "How did you sleep?" he asked. "Fine," I said. "Your Majesty." He said my name, just once, quietly, like he was testing the weight of it against his tongue and had decided, somewhere in that single syllable, to keep it. I stopped breathing entirely. He came back the next day, and the day after that, each time some version of the same thing. He found me, he stopped, he asked something that had nothing to do with my work and everything to do with me. What I thought of the tapestries in the East Wing, whether I had ever left the palace walls, what I would do, he asked once, very quietly, if I could go anywhere at all. I told him I had never thought about it. He looked at me like he knew that was a lie. I told myself he was bored. Kings got bored. I was a novelty, the maid in the bath, the small, strange joke the palace would tell for a season and forget. I told myself this every night with great conviction. Every morning he came back. And I began to notice things I had no business noticing. The way his shoulders dropped when he found me, a barely perceptible exhale, like something held tight all morning, only now released. The amber that warmed the edges of his irises when I surprised him into almost smiling. The way the senior attendants watched him near me, exchanging glances in low, careful tones, like people who had witnessed something they did not yet have words for. He was calm around me. Not controlled calm, something older, something that came from the wolf, not the king. I knew what that meant. I refused to know what that meant. On the 7th morning, he left a small book on the east corridor windowsill, palace texts, placed without comment, just waiting. I stood holding it and felt the specific terror of a person who has spent their whole life wanting nothing, suddenly realizing they want something so much it has become a liability. That evening, I heard 2 housemaids whispering near the linen cupboard. The king, the maid he keeps seeking out, and then, low and certain, the sentence that sat on my chest until morning. Lady Seraphine arrives at the end of the week.
It started with a look. Not cruel, not even unkind exactly. Just the particular look that palace women of a certain rank had perfected over generations. The one that traveled from your face to your hands to your shoes and back again, tallying everything it found and finding it wanting. Lady Crestwood delivered it in the linen corridor on a Tuesday morning with a smile so courteous it could have been framed. "My dear," she said, "you do understand, don't you, that certain kinds of attention are not, how shall I say, survivable for a girl in your position?" A pause. Her smile did not waver. "There are consequences for maids who forget what they are. The last one who made this particular mistake was sent to the work camps in the northern provinces. 7 years. She tilted her head, her voice dropping softer. She came back, but she doesn't speak anymore. No one says her name now. It is as though she simply stopped existing. A beat. I mention it only because I think you are clever enough to make good choices, while you still can." She moved on. I stood very still until she turned the corner. After that, it happened quickly. The other maids stopped meeting my eyes over breakfast.
My supervisor reassigned me to the far wing with an apology so practiced it had clearly been rehearsed. Someone moved my mop outside my quarters overnight. There was a note attached. I did not read it. I told myself I was fine. But that night, alone in my quarters with the note on the floor where I had left it, I let myself feel it, just for a moment, in the privacy of a room where no one could see. The cold shoulder of women I had worked beside for years, the deliberate turning away, and underneath all of it, Lady Crestwood's voice. She doesn't speak anymore. No one says her name now. I had known there was a price. I had not known someone would describe it to me with such careful, courteous precision. I picked the note up off the floor, put it in the cold hearth without reading it, lay down and stared at the ceiling, and breathed through it the way I had breathed through every hard thing since I was 6 years old, quietly, thoroughly, without making it anyone else's problem. Fine. I was fine. In the morning, I moved to the far wing and kept my head down, and performed invisibility with every skill I possessed. He found me anyway. 4 days into my reassignment, he appeared at the end of the far corridor, amber in his eyes, jaw very still, and I watched him take in the mop, the wrong corridor, the careful distance between me and everything familiar. He said nothing. He walked to where I stood, turned, and began walking back the way I had come. He looked at me once over his shoulder. The amber was fully present, burning quiet and certain. I followed. He found the housekeeper. He spoke 4 words at a register so low and so absolute that I felt them in my sternum rather than heard them with my ears. She nodded without looking up. My assignment was restored within the hour. He never mentioned it. The next morning he appeared in the east corridor and asked me what I would do if I could learn anything in the world. Anything, he said, like it was simple, like it was already decided. And that was the moment I understood I was not dealing with a bored king. I was dealing with something far more dangerous, an alpha who had made up his mind. That evening, Lady Seraphine's carriage rolled through the palace gates. I watched from the far window, my reflection ghosted in the glass, and felt something settle into my chest like a stone dropping into still water. The ripples did not stop. She was everything I was not. I understood that before she had crossed the threshold of the great hall. Lady Seraphine moved through a room the way women raised for rooms moved, unhurried, composed, belonging to every space she entered the way I had never belonged to any. The court exhaled when she arrived, that collective release of tension. This was correct. This was the shape the world was supposed to take. I watched from behind a column and performed the mathematics precisely. Treaty, council, bloodline, centuries of precedent. Every line arrived at the same answer. That evening he found me in the garden, sitting in the dark on the stone bench near the east wall, doing a poor job of feeling nothing. He appeared without announcement, his wolf too certain of where I was to bother with approach, and sat beside me without asking. I explained the situation to him, thoroughly. The treaty, the alliance, the political implications, the centuries of precedent. I was calm, I was reasonable, I was very, very composed. He listened to every word. Then he looked at me, amber warming at the edges, wolf entirely present and entirely unhurried, and said, "You're describing a problem for my counsel. You're not describing what I feel when I look at you." I opened my mouth. "You can leave the palace," he said quietly. "You cannot leave me." The words landed somewhere below my ribs and did not move. I was sitting on a stone bench in a dark garden, holding the complete collapse of every reasonable argument I had prepared, and feeling, underneath all of it, something that frightened me far more than any of this. I was not going to win. Not because he was king and I was a maid, not because the treaty was real and the council was powerful and the geometry irrefutable. Because I did not want to win. And that was the most dangerous thing I had ever felt in my life.
I did not hear him come in. That was how absorbed I was, crouched in the back corner of the palace library at the hour when sensible people were asleep, sounding out words from a governance text I had no business touching, my lips moving slightly like a child at lessons. 7 years of stolen hours. 7 years of teaching myself, letter by letter, the language the rest of the world had simply been handed. I turned a page. "You're holding it too close," he said. I nearly knocked the candle over. He was sitting in the chair opposite. I do not know for how long. I do not know how he moved that quietly for a man that size, watching me with something quieter than amusement, something that looked, in the low light, uncomfortably close to tenderness. He reached across and turned the book toward the stronger candle. Then he sat back and waited. I do not know why I talked. Something about the library at that hour, the darkness outside the windows, the fact that he had seen me and said nothing that could be used against me. Something unlocked that should have stayed locked. I told him about my parents. Fever, both of them, the same winter when I was 6. The servant quarters after. The particular understanding you arrive at when you are small and the world keeps demonstrating with great patience and consistency exactly what it thinks you are worth. That love is not a thing that happens to girls with no name and no roof of their own. That wanting things is simply the first step toward learning, in the most expensive way possible, that you are right about yourself all along. I told him all of it. He listened without moving. Then he looked at me, that look, the one since the bath, like I was the only solid thing in a room full of shifting fog, and said very quietly that I was the least replaceable person he had ever encountered, that he had stood before armies and felt nothing, that I had undone him completely by trying to not be noticed. The silence afterward was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I could feel it, the distance closing, something in my chest coming loose at the seams. His eyes were fully amber, warm and unguarded, and I was about to say it. The real thing, the thing I had been circling for weeks. I opened my mouth. The door opened. An attendant, pale-faced, council matter, urgent, cannot wait. Rowan's jaw tightened so hard I saw the muscle move. The amber went sharp and dangerous. He looked at the attendant. He looked at me. I used the 3 seconds. I folded myself small, found the distance, picked up the book and held it against my chest like a shield, and looked at the middle space between us instead of his face. Because if I looked at his face, I could not do what I was doing. He paused beside me on his way to the door, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. Then he was gone. I stood alone, with the candle guttering down, and the shape of everything I had almost said sitting in my mouth like something swallowed wrong. Tomorrow, I told myself,
I would be braver tomorrow. In the morning, I found out about the announcement. I had told myself I would not watch. I watched anyway, from behind the serving column in the Great Hall, as Rowan stood before the assembled court and announced his intention to honor the treaty with Lady Seraphine. The relief in the room was audible. Not applause, something worse than applause. The collective exhale of a court that had been holding its breath for weeks. I watched his face. I knew what surrender looked like on a man. This was not that. His jaw was set at the angle I recognized as control rather than acceptance. The amber had gone deliberately flat, not absent, managed, pressed down with the effort of a man making a calculated move and hating every inch of it. Part of me knew exactly what I was looking at. I left anyway. I packed my bag in 12 minutes. I took the small book from the windsill and told myself it was because I had earned it with 7 years of stolen reading hours and for no other reason whatsoever. The palace was dark, the gates unguarded. I had timed it correctly. I was almost to the east corridor when I heard footsteps behind me, composed, unhurried, not a guard's footsteps, not a maid's. I turned. Seraphine stood 10 feet away in the pre-dawn dark, still in her evening dress, holding a small lamp. She looked at me the way no one in this palace had ever looked at me, not with hostility, not with pity, not performing anything at all, just directly, like I was worth the directness. "You're leaving," she said. "Yes," I said. "I don't love him." Her voice was even, the voice of someone saying a thing that had needed saying long enough. "I want you to know that. I have never loved him and I never will. And if you leave tonight, I will marry him anyway, and both of us will be very correct and very miserable, and the alliance will hold perfectly, and no one will say a word about it for the next 40 years. I said nothing. "He has not slept since the night you arrived. His wolf howled at dawn 3 days ago, and 3 guards came to ask me if he was ill. I have spent 4 weeks watching him search for you in every room before he does anything else." A pause, precise and deliberate. "I have never seen an alpha look at anyone the way he looks at you, and I have known a great many alphas. It doesn't matter how he looks at me." My voice came out steadier than I deserved. "I am a maid." She looked at me for a long moment, not unkindly, with the particular exhausted directness of someone deeply tired of watching people construct excuses for their own fear. "You are not leaving because you are a maid," she said quietly. "You are leaving because you are afraid. Those are different things. One of them is true, and one of them is a story you are telling yourself so you do not have to find out what happens if you stay." The lamp flickered. "I cannot make you stay, but I want you to know that I see exactly what you are doing. And I think somewhere underneath all of that very convincing composure, so do you." She turned, walked back down the corridor without looking back. The darkness swallowed her completely. I stood alone in the pre-dawn cold with my small bag and a truth I could not argue with, because it had come from the one person in this entire palace who had absolutely no reason to say anything kind to me at all. I stood there for a very long time. Then I walked out the gate anyway. Seraphine's words came with me. Every mile of road they came with me. You are not leaving because you are a maid. You are leaving because you are afraid. I had been walking for 2 days when I heard it, carried on the wind from somewhere far behind me, unmistakable and raw and like nothing I had ever heard from a human throat. A wolf, howling at dawn, not with rage, not with warning, with grief. My legs stopped moving entirely. Somewhere behind me, in a palace I had just walked away from, the Alpha King had lost control of his wolf for the first time in living memory, because of me. I stood on the road in the early light and understood with absolute devastating clarity that I had not solved anything. I had only made it worse. 2 days later, elbow deep in work, having almost convinced myself the hollowness in my chest was something I could outlast, the door opened. I did not look up. I knew his footsteps. He was travel-worn in a way I had never seen him, dust on his riding coat, dark circles under eyes that were fully, completely amber, no effort made to manage them. He had not slept. He had not stopped. He stood in the doorway of a village inn 2 days' ride from his own palace with the look of a man held together by a single thread for 48 hours, who had finally arrived at the only place the thread had been pointing. Alone, no guard, no attendant, no announcement, just him. The other patrons were very still. The innkeeper had stopped breathing audibly. He crossed the room and stopped in front of me. I opened my mouth. I had arguments prepared, good ones, refined over 2 days of road and guilt and a wolf's howl that had not left my chest. "I know you saw my face," he said. My arguments dissolved. His voice was quiet, not the careful quiet of a man managing himself, the absolute quiet of something that has moved past managing into certainty. The amber in his eyes was completely still, compass needle still. "I know you suspected, and I know you left anyway." A pause. His jaw tightened once. "You didn't run because you thought I had given up. You ran because you were afraid I hadn't." The silence in the inn was total. "You are the most honest person I have ever met," he said, "and the only lie you have ever told is the one you tell yourself about what you are worth." He looked at me for one long moment, the amber burning steady and without mercy. "I let you leave once," he said quietly. "That was my mistake." Then he knelt. Not with ceremony, not with the performance of a king making a gesture. He went down on one knee on a dirt floor and looked up at me, deliberately below my eye level, so I could not mistake it for authority, could not mistake it for command, could not mistake it for anything other than exactly what it was. "I am not asking you to trust the situation. I am not asking you to trust the council or the treaty or what comes next. I am asking you to trust yourself, to trust what you felt in the library, to trust what you have known since the night of the bath." I thought about the steam, the unsteady hand, the 7 mornings he came back. I thought about the library. The candle, the book tilted toward better light, the thing I had been about to say. I thought about Seraphine in the corridor. You are not leaving because you are a maid. You are leaving because you are afraid. I thought about how I had left and how he had come anyway, and how the evidence had become impossible to argue with. I had been careful my whole life. Careful had not kept me from loving him, it had only kept me from telling him. I took his hand. His eyes closed for exactly 1 second. I felt the exhale moved through him, that exhale I had been watching for weeks, the wolf finally having what it had been straining toward, except this time it was not a morning greeting in a corridor. This time it was everything. He stood. His hand was warm and steady now, completely steady, all the trembling gone. "We go back," he said. "We go back," I said. A year later, I am standing at a window in a palace that is now also mine, watching Rowan cross the courtyard below. He looks up. He always looks up, as if his wolf has never once stopped pointing in my direction, as if it found north on a night of steam and candlelight and has not deviated a single degree since. His eyes find me, and the amber is warm and unhurried, and he does not look away. I used to think love was a thing that happened to people with names worth keeping. I used to think wanting something was the first step toward learning you were right about yourself. I know different things now. I know that Seraphine married a man she had chosen herself 6 months after the treaty was renegotiated, and that she sent me a letter on our wedding day that I keep in the drawer beside my bed and have read so many times the fold lines are soft as cloth. I know that the wolf howled the night our son was born, and every guard in the palace heard it, and not one of them was afraid. I know that Rowan still finds me every single morning in whatever room I happen to be in, not because he has to, because his wolf has never once pointed anywhere else. I will not tell you it became easy. The council took 8 months to stop watching me like a problem that had not yet been solved. There are still rooms in this palace where I feel the old instinct rise, the pull toward smallness, toward corners, toward the practiced invisibility I wore for so many years it left an impression. Sometimes, in the quiet before dawn when the palace is dark, and I am alone with my own thoughts, I feel the edge of it still, the fear that this is all too much, that I am still somehow too little for the life I am living, that one morning he will look up and the amber will be different, and I will understand that the wolf has finally recalculated. He looks up. It is never different. But I notice that I check, and I think I will notice that for a long time yet, maybe always. The hardest thing I ever did was not surviving the palace or the court or the council or the long road between here and a village inn on a dirt floor. It was letting myself be found. It was standing there with every careful, practiced, well-constructed reason to fold myself small one last time and choosing not to. Deciding that careful was not the same thing as alive, that the familiar shape of loss was not the same thing as safety. He is crossing the courtyard below, and he looks up, and something in his face does the thing it has always done, that settling, that exhale, that wolf going quiet and certain, and home. I press my hand flat to the glass. He stops walking entirely, just for a moment, just to look. I never did learn to be invisible again. I stopped trying. But some mornings, just some, I still have to remind myself I am allowed to be seen. And loving him, I have found, does not make that easier. It makes it necessary. That, I think, is honest enough.